you need to understand that life is complex and it will always have challenges. And usually the opposite of resilience is fragility, you being fragile. Hi everyone, welcome back to the I Am Unafraid podcast. I'm so excited to be back here again. So for those who don't know, my name is Lilian Okado, and like I said, this is the I Am Unafraid podcast. And this new episode is has come from feedback that I've gotten from viewers over the last couple of series of episodes that I have shot and that you guys have watched. First of all, I want to say thank you for everyone who's been watching and been commenting and just been sending me questions. And so there were a couple of questions that I got from you guys. So this first one is actually dedicated to somebody who asked this question. How do people cultivate resilience in the face of adversity, and what lessons can be learned from setbacks or challenges? Yeah. So today we are talking about resilience. Now, when I saw this question, it made me go back to an incident that I happened to experience like about a month ago. About a month ago, I had a meeting somewhere in Upper Hill, and I ordered an Uber. I think it was an Uber or a Bolt. So I ordered a taxi, right? And so it was in the morning. I was running late. I had the meeting like around 9 a.m. in the morning, and the Uber came. And when I got into the Uber, what happens on the ride anywhere, especially in the mornings, I'll put on my earpods or my earphones, and I'll be listening to something. I'll be listening to maybe some motivational content. Sometimes in the morning I'll be praying or listening to worship music. So I just put on immediately, yeah. I say hi to the cab guy. I sit down, I put on, and I'm like, okay, by the time we get there, I'll be done listening to my things. Now, the interesting thing, as I've zoned out, right? So I'm in the cab at the back left, zoned out, but I'm feeling like this car, like we're on a bumpy road. So I keep on looking out and thinking, what road are we using? But I notice it's the same route from my home to town to where it's the same route we use every day with anytime I'm going into town or anywhere, right? But the car is just bumping. And it was so bumpy. And I was wondering what's going on. But one thing about me, sometimes, I ignore things. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just my imagination today. So, and then the interesting thing is there was no traffic, but it was like we were moving very slowly. So I'm wondering, why aren't we making progress? So at a point, I removed my earpods and I'm like, okay, is there something wrong? I feel like we haven't moved. And then today, the road is really rough. By this time, we are around State House Road, near there. And I'm like, I've never experienced bumps here, Then the guy tells me, oh, madam, I'm so sorry. I had wanted to tell you when you jumped into the cab, but you put on your earpods. This car has no shock absorbers. So I'm like, wait, what? Sometimes you think, when you're in let's say a matatu that is bumpy or public transport, and we really complain about it. This was really bad. Like, there was literally no resistance. Like, we were just bumping up and down. So he says he had an issue with his car the previous day. He took it to the garage. Some things were fixed, but they didn't find the exact shock absorbers. So now this guy decides, hey, I still have to work and I still have to put food on the table. So he just decided to go to work. So I remember just feeling so convicted and thinking, wow, you were so brave to actually still carry clients who are going to whine. In fact, when he dropped me, I kind of felt not sorry, but empathetic for him. And I actually said a small prayer. I said, I really hope that he has a good day, because the way that ride was bumpy, let me tell you guys, I can guarantee he must have had a rough day with clients, So anyway, why am I talking about that example? I think in life, I would compare resilience to shock absorbers. Sometimes you don't think about it. You're in a car, you're driving, but the reason why that car is smooth is because there are shock absorbers. You don't feel the bumps. And when there are no shock absorbers, it's really bumpy and rough. It's like you're on a rough road terrain, right? So resilience to me is really the question we talk about is, do you have shock absorbers in your life? And how do you begin to build on them? So for me, the first thing is I usually say, first of all, you have to go through life. Yeah. You just have to toughen up. That's one of the things that I tell myself a lot. Like after the whining and the sadness and all these things happening to you, you just have to tell yourself, by the way, we have to toughen up. Like there's no otherwise, right? You need to understand that life is complex and it will always have challenges. And usually the opposite of resilience is fragility, you being fragile. So you have to make a decision whether you're going to be fragile, the victim, or you're going to be resilient. But there are ways in which you can help deal with life's issues. And one of the ways is by simply gaining some perspective on the issue that is giving you a challenge. So for example, whatever it is you could be going through, is it really that much of a big deal? How big is that problem? Like yesterday I was with somebody and we were just sharing, and I was sharing a personal experience that I've been through in life, etc. And he was telling me that, you know what, I hear what you're saying and I hear the pain and the frustration and the suffering you've gone through. But in the grand scheme of things, is your problem unfixable? Say for, let's say, death, disease, illnesses, and things like that, I believe that all problems can be fixed. And sometimes you just need to take a deep breath, right? Take a pause a bit and then sit aside and think about, is this problem really what I really think it is? Maybe sometimes it's not that big. That's number one. Number two, I always say build mental toughness. And I think many of us are good at that. Think about it. You can have a really bad day or a bad night, but in the morning you have things to do. You wake up and you tell yourself, I have to go to work, or I have to wake up and do life. You just have to build the mental toughness. Your mindset is a big thing. Usually some of the things that I do, for example, like even this morning when I woke up, I usually wake up very early in the morning, anywhere between 3 and 5 a.m. So it depends. Some days I'll wake up at 3 a.m. If I can't, I'll be up definitely by 5 a.m. And for me, because I'm a person of faith, I don't know about anyone else, but for me, it's way easier to start my day with prayer. So I'll do my prayers in the morning. I'll also do my meditations. I will also do my affirmations. So I'll just be there reminding myself how beautiful and gorgeous I am, how amazing, how intelligent, just feeding my mind with positive affirmations that can help me kind of toughen up, but also remind myself that, you know what, life is not as bad as we think it is, right? And then something else that I do as well, or I would recommend you doing is, and I've talked about it in a previous segment, the 90-day rule. I have a 90-day rule, right? For those who've never had this rule of mine, what I do is anything that happens to me, it doesn't matter how bad it is. Say for, again, let me be sensitive here. There are certain things that are very hard to overcome within a short period of time. Again, things like death, loss of a loved one, illness, being diagnosed with some illness, or, there are things that are heavy. But when it comes to other issues, whether it's, let's say, a relationship has gone sour with a friendship or a love interest, whatever it is, or there's frustration at work, I give myself 90 days. And in those 90 days, I will allow myself to mourn. I will allow myself to be a victim. I will allow myself to, just whine and wallow, because we are human, guys. It's impossible to be happy all the time, but you can choose to actually be happy. You can choose and say, okay, fine, done with the whining. Now it's time to just move forward. So for me, it's 90 days. And so it's funny I say this, but I've done it so many times. Like even when I mentioned this before, when I fell pregnant and I found out I was going to become a single mother, or I was going to start parenting on my own, I was really angry, right? But I remember telling myself, you know what? I don't have time to be angry because I'm becoming a parent in 9 months. So I told myself 90 days I will cry. And let me tell you guys, I cried for those, okay, not the entire 90 days. I remember it was just the first month that was really tough. I would wake up and put time at 7 a.m. I'm like, this is the time for crying. Anyway, I don't know if you have to do that, but yeah, I mean, my point is allow yourself to grieve and mourn deliberately. That way you do not begin to push down your feelings or ignore your feelings, because if you ignore your feelings, they come out, right? At some point in time. And what I found was like by month 2.5, there was no tears coming out. I didn't feel sad. I was okay. I had begun to accept my role as an upcoming mother or future mom. And yeah, to date, I don't have issues with being a single parent, parenting my child on my own. So 90-day rule works, and I guarantee, guys, it works for everything. And then something else which has always been a challenge for me, which may be a challenge for many of you, especially, like we say, resilience. You have to learn how to speak up. I grew up in an environment where it was very difficult for me. I kind of lost my voice. Like there was so much happening that it was hard for me to actually express myself when I was upset. It was almost like I couldn't do it. And so I built a habit of not speaking up. So things can happen to me. Someone can do something and I'll just swallow, breathe in, breathe out, and I'll walk away. But then what happens is I will walk away thinking about that thing. And for days after, I'll still be upset about it. And I realized it was making me kind of bitter, kind of moody, depressed. One of those people who's just not happy, always feeling like the world is so heavy. But I eventually learned how to speak up very recently. Let me just say in my 40s. I think when I turned 40 is when I was like, I can't just be keeping quiet, And I remember an incident with a friend where I mean, they did something and usually I would have walked away, but I remember telling myself, no, I'm going to say how I feel. I'm going to communicate to this person what I feel they've done that has hurt me. And the minute I did that, what I realized was immediately all the angst that I had towards the situation, towards her, disappeared, And sometimes people also like to say, like, because sometimes what I would do is, even if I don't speak up immediately, I'll speak up eventually. So sometimes it may be after a couple of days, sometimes even weeks, yeah? Because if you're not used to speaking up, it takes courage to build that resilience to come and speak to somebody. So what would happen is sometimes guys would be like, but that happened 3 months ago. Why are you bringing it up now? Why didn't you bring it up then? That's a very valid question, but I want to say this to those people who think that if things happen today, you have to speak up immediately, right? That's not the case, guys. There's no timeline for when someone should be, how do I say? There's no timeline for vulnerability. There's no timeline for the perfect time to talk to somebody about or have a hard conversation with somebody. Let me give you an example. Right now we're hearing all these stories of PDD and people coming up right now and talking about what he used to do or what he did to them years ago. So someone would be like, why didn't they speak up then? They were not ready, right? So this is just me saying that if somebody comes and speaks up to you about an issue, don't take it in the negative light. There's never a wrong time to speak up. And I want to encourage those people who don't know how to speak up. There's never a wrong time. If you have an issue with somebody, please, even if it happened last year, 2 years ago, you're allowed to raise it now, yeah? So that's the next thing about building resilience. And then there's also, I think, give yourself credit. And I like to use this example, like, like when we are conceived at birth, when your parents did the deed and, you were conceived, there's always that joke that sometimes you hear that though I'm like a million sperm that made it to the egg and fertilized. Like you made it. And then you stayed, you incubated for 9 months, and then you came out, you were born, your mom gave birth to you, and you're here, and you've been through all the years of your life, you've gone through all different challenges, and you're still here. So by default, you are created resilient. It's just that sometimes life makes us think that we are weak or we don't have it. No, you already have it. So give yourself some credit. This far that you've come in life, you're extremely resilient. Yeah. So always remind yourself that you're doing good. And then also, be the architect of your fate. Like, you determine who you are. I know, because again of the environments that we are in, sometimes it's very easy to feel like you're not capable, or you're not resilient enough, or things keep happening to you and you don't know why, but you can decide. Like, for example, when I talked about the 90-day rule, I just made it up, right? I don't remember reading about it any time and saying that, oh, I'll have 90 days. I didn't even know that it would work. I took a gamble. But the reason I took the gamble was because I was very clear in my mind that I am not going to let this situation put me down. I determine how my life turns out, of course, with the grace of God, right? So you are the orchestrator of your life. Like, you decide. So choose to be resilient. It's a decision, right? It's a decision despite whatever happens. Even if tomorrow you wake up and you're feeling, oh my God, I just want to sleep, I don't want, it happens. After you're done with those 5 minutes or 10 minutes of wallowing, just choose to rise up again. And then also, this can be a tough one. I think for me, especially when I was approaching 40, and for those who know a bit of my story, I shared this on Facebook. I did a post and that went viral, and I was talking about the way that I had a life that was I had kind of made it. I felt like I'd made it. I was financially independent. I was living my best life. I was able to travel the world, see the world. I was really in a very good place. And then what happened was, life happened, right? But then it took me, I think, 7 years to actually, maybe, let me say 5 to 6 years, to actually be able to talk about that experience publicly, right? So even by the time I was writing about it on Facebook, I'd already kind of healed from it, and it took time. But what made me eventually move into the space of healing and was the fact that I took an inventory of my life, and then I had a very honest conversation with myself. Honest in the sense that, you also have to look back and tell yourself, what did I contribute to where I am? So yes, life has happened and it's tough, but you are in the story when life was happening. Like, this is your life, this is your story, this is your movie. What role did you play? So for me, I did an inventory and I was like, you know what, Lilian? Cut the BS. In as much as all these terrible things happened to you, you also made decisions, right? And you have to fess up. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and you have to say, what role did I play getting to this point? And that was something that actually helped me to move past. And I think it has also, I keep on telling people, I think I'm one of the toughest people in terms of most resilient people I know personally. Maybe I can say some people in my family, but I think I am one of the most resilient people because of all the things that I've been able to overcome over and over again. But it's because every time something happens that I do not like, immediately I'll come and say, okay, fine, this person didn't talk to me nicely. What role did I play in allowing them to talk to me the way they wanted to talk to me? Okay, this boss did ABCD, or this client did ABCD. What role did I play in allowing them to do ABCD to me or affect me in any way? My family are like this with me. What role do I play in allowing my family to be like this with me? How can I then decide how the rest of my life will be? So take an honest inventory. So I hope those few tips are helpful. I guess last but not least, I would say keep watching the I Am Unafraid podcast to build your resilience. Because I think one of the reasons why, and I want to end with this, one of the reasons why I started this podcast was really for me, and why I called it the I Am Unafraid podcast is because I realized that there was a lot of things holding. I felt like I was held back in life because I was afraid, right? I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to look at myself in the mirror. I was afraid to just be me, to live an authentic life. And I was finding at some point that I'm miserable. I realized I had people around me, friends, family, colleagues, workmates, whatever, who had a perception of who I was. But then I realized that the perception they had was not me. So because of how life had been, or maybe the experiences I had got, and I don't know if anyone can relate to this, we end up putting a facade because you want people to see you a certain way. So I would toughen up. So when things happen to me, I'm quiet. I act like everything is okay. But at the end of the day, I found that I was suffering because of being silent. So the Unafraid podcast is really about speaking up, being authentic, and speaking about things that are difficult to speak about, and actually just having them from a very honest perspective. So I hope that you'll continue to journey with me on this journey that I'm taking, and that as we go along, because I keep on saying this podcast is about life, love, and healing. Why? Because I think life happens to all of us. Love is something that is very integral to the experiences that we go through. All of us experience love, whether it's a familial in capacity or it's in a love relationship with the opposite gender. And these are things that things in life and in love, if you don't fix them, if you don't learn to speak about them, to deal with them, they really contribute to your healing, and hence why it's life, love, and healing. So I'm hoping that by the time we are done with a couple of episodes and we continue on this journey, many of us, including myself, will be able to achieve that level of healing, and we'll be living a more bold and unafraid life. So thank you guys for tuning in. And before I leave, how do you build resilience? Number one, get some perspective. How bad is the problem you're dealing with? That's number one. Number two, toughen up. Build up your mental toughness, right? Number three, the 90-day rule. Yeah, this is where you take 90 days to go through what it is, to mourn, yeah, to go through what you're going through, to deal. Take 90 days and you'll find that even before 90 days, you'll be done with your whatever issue you're dealing with. Number four, speak up immediately something happens, right? Speaking up. For those people who don't know how to speak up, right? And then the next one is number five, give yourself credit. Yeah. How far you've come in life, you're already resilient. The fact that you were born, you're already resilient. And then be the architect of your faith. Number six, be the architect of your fate. Decide what kind of life you want to live. Do you want to be miserable forever, or do you want to continue with life? Number eight, take an honest inventory of your life. Take responsibility. Look at, what role you played to get to where you are. Yeah. And then, of course, keep watching the Unafraid podcast.